Good evening. I am Richard reporting live. Tonight, the Middle East stands at the edge of an abyss. What began as a targeted military campaign has now spiraled into one of the most complex multi-front wars this region has witnessed in modern history. From the burning waters of the Strait of Hormuz to the shattered skyline of Beirut, from the oil fields of Saudi Arabia to the skies above Kuwait and Qatar, no corner of the Middle East is untouched. And tonight we bring you the full picture. Let us begin with what Iran's government is calling a catastrophe of historic proportions. Tehran has officially declared that since the outbreak of hostilities on February 28, the United States and Israel have struck nearly 10,000 civilian structures across the Islamic Republic. That number, staggering in its scale, comes directly from Iran's Red Crescent Society, which reports that nearly 10,000 buildings have been destroyed or severely damaged in the relentless wave of airstrikes now entering its second week. Among those structures, over 7,400 private residences reduced to rubble, more than 1,600 commercial buildings gutted by fire and explosives, 65 schools left in ruins, and 32 medical and pharmaceutical facilities, the very lifelines of the wounded and the sick, obliterated. But it does not stop there. Iran has raised an alarm that will echo far beyond the battlefield. UNESCO-listed cultural heritage sites, irreplaceable monuments to human civilization, have sustained serious and in some cases irreversible damage. The Golestan Palace in Tehran, a jewel of Persian imperial architecture, parts of the ancient city of Isfahan, a city that has stood for over 2,000 years. These are not military installations. These are the soul of a civilization, and tonight they bear the scars of war. Iranian officials place the death toll within their borders at approximately 1,300 people killed since the conflict began. Total deaths across the entire theater of war: Iran, Lebanon. Now let us turn to Lebanon, where the situation has once again descended into familiar, devastating violence. Israeli forces have launched a fresh and intensive wave of airstrikes targeting what the Israeli Defense Forces describe as Hezbollah infrastructure. A strike hit central Beirut in the early hours of Wednesday morning, the heart of a capital city that has already endured so much. The death toll in Lebanon since the opening of this front has now climbed to 570, with 84 people alone killed in Tuesday's strikes, more than 700,000 Lebanese civilians, nearly a sixth of the country's entire population, have been displaced from their homes, many for the second or third time in their lives. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, made the government's position unmistakably clear on Wednesday, stating that the joint bombing campaign conducted alongside the United States would continue, in his words, as long as necessary. There is no off-ramp being offered, no ceasefire on the table. The Israeli military has simultaneously announced it is deploying an additional infantry brigade to reinforce its northern command, the command responsible for overseeing ground operations against Hezbollah along the Lebanese border. The message is unambiguous. Israel is preparing not just to bomb, but to fight. Meanwhile, the scope of the American military operation against Iran is now being revealed in numbers that were, until now, almost unimaginable. General Michael Kurilla, the commander of United States Central Command, confirmed on Wednesday that American forces have now struck more than 5,500 separate targets inside Iran. That includes ballistic missile launch sites, weapons storage depots, command and control facilities, and critically, more than 60 vessels of the Iranian Navy, now largely destroyed or disabled. Admiral Cooper of Central Command described the intensity of Tuesday's strikes as nearly continuous strike waves nearly every hour, he said, from different locations and directions going into Iran. This is not a surgical strike campaign. This is a sustained industrial-scale air war, and in a significant development that underscores just how internationalized this conflict has now become. 3 United States Air Force B-1 Lancer bombers were spotted returning to RAF Fairford Air Base in Gloucestershire, England, in the early hours of Wednesday morning. This marks what appears to be the first time American heavy bombers have conducted bombing runs over Iran from British soil since the war began. The use of a NATO ally's airbase in Europe to prosecute strikes in the Persian Gulf represents a profound expansion of the operational footprint of this war and raises serious questions about the degree to which European nations are being drawn, willingly or not, into the conflict. Now to the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow corridor of blue water through which roughly 1/5 of the world's entire oil supply passes every single day. Tonight, that corridor is a war zone. 3 commercial vessels were struck by unknown projectiles in the strait on Wednesday. The first was the Mayuri, a Thai-flagged bulk carrier operating in waters off the Omani coast. A fire broke out in the main engine room, forcing the crew to abandon ship and evacuate. A second vessel sustained significant damage approximately 25 miles northwest of Ras Al Khaimah in the United Arab Emirates. A third ship, another bulk carrier, was hit roughly 50 miles northwest of Dubai. 3 commercial ships in a single day in a waterway that the entire global economy depends upon. The United States military responded. US Central Command announced it had destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels operating near the strait, following intelligence reports that Iran had begun seeding the waters with naval mines. An act of maritime warfare that directly threatens the free passage of international shipping, but Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has made no attempt to conceal its intentions. In a formal declaration, Iran's Central Operational Command, the Qatar Al-Anbiya headquarters, designated any vessel belonging to the United States, Israel, or any nation it considers their ally as, quote, a legitimate target in the Strait of Hormuz, and the URG went further still, declaring that Iran's armed forces will not allow, and these are their words, a single liter of oil to transit the strait for as long as American and Israeli attacks continue. The world markets have heard that threat and they are reacting accordingly. But the war did not stay confined to Iranian territory or Lebanon's battered streets. On Wednesday, Iran launched a new wave of missiles and armed drones across the Gulf region, targeting multiple countries simultaneously. Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Defense reported that its air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 5 armed drones heading directly toward the Shaiba oil field, one of the kingdom's most critical and strategically important petroleum installations, located deep in the empty Quarter Desert. Kuwait's air defenses engaged and destroyed 8 drones flying over the small but oil-rich nation. Qatar and Bahrain also reported incoming missiles and drones, with interception operations underway. In the United Arab Emirates, air defense batteries responded to incoming fire as projectiles were tracked heading toward populated areas. This is no longer a war between 2 or 3 actors. This is a regional conflagration. Every Gulf state is now, in one way or another, a battlefield. In Washington, President Donald Trump addressed reporters with his characteristic mixture of confidence and contradiction. On the question of how long this war will last, the president has sent mixed signals, saying at various points that it will be over very soon, while simultaneously listing Iran's unconditional surrender as the only acceptable condition for ending hostilities. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt clarified on Tuesday that it will be President Trump, not Iranian leadership, who determines when and if Iran has in fact surrendered unconditionally. The president has also confirmed that the total destruction of the Iranian Navy is among the stated core objectives of the American military campaign. Meanwhile, senior US officials acknowledge that as many as 150 American troops have been wounded in the conflict, so far the first official acknowledgement of significant US casualties. In this war, the global community is watching with increasing alarm. The United Nations has called for an immediate ceasefire. Flights to Dubai and other Gulf hubs have been suspended by multiple international airlines, including KLM, as the threat to civilian aviation in the region becomes impossible to ignore. Oil prices, though temporarily fluctuating, remain under intense pressure as the world contemplates what a complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz would truly mean for the global economy. On the streets of Tehran, families gathered Wednesday for mass funerals, mourning the commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, mourning ordinary civilians, mourning the dead who arrived without warning from the sky. Photographs emerging from the Iranian capital show grief on a scale that words struggle to capture. Crowds in black, stretching as far as the eye can see. This is the story of March 11, 2026. A region at war on multiple fronts. A superpower unleashing its full military arsenal from multiple continents. A nation of 90 million people under bombardment. Shipping lanes that feed the world's energy supply under direct attack, and no end clearly in sight. We will continue to bring you updates as this situation develops. For all of us here in the newsroom, stay informed, stay safe, and we will be back with you through the night. This has been your evening news report. The world is watching. History is being written, and the cost, as always, is being paid in human lives.